The Senate Committee on Natural Resources will now come to order. Will the Secretary please call roll?
Senator Flores, Senator Goycochea, Senator Hansen, Senator Pizzina, Senator Scheibel.
And Senator Flores is present as well, so please mark him present, and please let it be noted that we do have a quorum with 5 members present. Before we begin, we'd like to provide some general housekeeping reminders. Please do silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Otherwise, Senator Goycochea will be answering your calls for the remainder of the afternoon. The public is advised that during meetings, legislators and staff are using laptops to view bills and exhibits, especially during work sessions, and not for personal reasons. We are trying to be as paper-free as possible, and please don't look at this as a sign of inattention or disrespect. Please note that we require everyone to submit exhibits in an electronic format the day before the meeting. And a few reminders for those of you who will be coming here if we do have any questions during the work session. During work sessions, we will not be taking testimony. However, we might have questions for the bill's sponsor. If we do, we'll ask that you come to the front and say and spell your name and affiliation, if any, for the record. At the end of the meeting, we'll be taking public comments, and we'll be limiting that to 2 minutes per person to ensure that everyone gets an opportunity to speak. Before we get into the work session today, we do have one order of business. I would like to mention a very special committee member who's been a part of the legislature and the natural resources family for 20 years and is serving in his last session. He will be missed by the entire body and by those especially on the Natural Resources Committee where we've been so fortunate to work with him. Senator Goycochea served his community as a Eureka County Commissioner for 16 years prior to his election to the Assembly, and we have greatly benefited from his knowledge and kindness in the Senate and on this committee. We have some of the Senator's friends who'd like to say a few special words in here today, so let's get started by embarrassing him greatly by having the Senate Minority Leader come to the front. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and I want to thank Senator Goycochea, my longtime friend, who doesn't like anyone to call attention to him. He's very short and concise on the floor, but always to the point. And he and I met long ago in 2005 during my first session. I was very fortunate to sit between him and Dr. Joe Hardy to start off in the very back of the assembly, the back right corner, and he helped me navigate legislation, and then later he was one of the folks who supported me to be the minority leader. And as you know, on the Republican side, we haven't had that many women, and at that time I think there was only one other woman in our caucus, and so to have sort of the Cowboy Caucus support me, led by John Carpenter and Pete Goycochea, was pretty amazing. It was, kind of a life-altering experience. So I'm grateful for his mentorship and his leadership and his friendship. And then, over on this side, he basically helps train the chairs of natural resources every session, because we typically have had majority Democrats, and that's typically the first assignment that a new member will have, as Senator Pizzina knows, and she's done an outstanding job. But Pete's helped you, and Ivana Cancella, and just down the road, because there's no one like Pete Goycochea who knows water law, who knows agriculture, who knows about wild horses, bear, the bear hunt, all kinds of different things. And so, I think he's been a mentor in different ways to every member of this body for every session and special session that he has served. And it's been an honor to work with him and to have him as my friend. I'm eternally grateful for the experience that we've had together. So thank you for your service, and thank you for recognizing him today.
Almost sounds like a eulogy.
You're still here, thank goodness. We had a couple scares. There was one year anyway, we're very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much to the Minority Leader, and I think it's so important we do this to say how much, even though I know it's so embarrassing right now, we appreciate everything. And the Minority Leader mentioned former chairs of this committee, and we have a special former chair I'd like to recognize right now, the state's Attorney General, Aaron Ford.
How you doing, Pete? So Pete saw me in the hallway, and I was like, "Dang, I'm trying to sneak in," but he saw me, so I walked up to the door with you and had to hide around the corner over there. I didn't say you weren't. No, it's great to come here. Thank you, Chairwoman Pazina, for reaching out and letting me know y'all were doing this. I wouldn't pass up the opportunity to come talk about my good buddy Pete Goicoechea. The first committee that I chaired, similar to you, Madam Chairwoman, was this one right here. Do you remember the first day? I sat right there, and it was you and Settlemyre, and then we had Menendo and David Parks. So that was the makeup of the committee, and you would appreciate this as well. I told everybody in the audience, I said, "Look, I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't camp, I don't hug trees." I said, "Hell, I don't go outside." I said, so I don't know why they made me chairperson of this committee. But it's because I have no dog in the hunt, pun intended, right? I have no dog in the hunt, and we were able to work that year on the 60 or so bills that we had. So it was such camaraderie that we ended up with almost unanimity on every single bill. You came before our committee on trapping. I remember that. We had trapping, we had horse tripping, we had the black bear hunts. We had all of that kind of stuff, and we got together and we worked as a committee in a bipartisan way and got almost unanimity on every single thing. And a lot of that is because of you being able to speak reasonably and rationally and educate us about what it was we didn't know necessarily. And I want to say to you, I've always appreciated your demeanor, your tact, your approach. He's only gotten mad at me one time that I remember. Do you remember it? Oh, he was so mad. It was a sine die on 2017. He got mad. I forget what happened, but clearly you got over it, so that's great. He also has a blackmail, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it out now because now you can't use it for blackmail anymore. He has I showed him a picture because I don't ride horses, like I said, right? So I did get on a horse one time. And I was on a trip overseas somewhere, and they had an itty-bitty old horse. They put me on it, and there was no saddle on it, no nothing, right? So I'm sitting there, and I'm looking scared. And they took a picture of me, and I showed it to Senator Goicoechea, and he said, "Yeah." He clicked it on his phone. He said, "Nah, I got you." You remember that? You remember that? I know you. So give me that picture back now, because I've already told everybody you can't use it. You can't use it. No, but in all seriousness, thank you so much for your statesmanship, for your dedication to not only Elko and not only your district, but the entire state. You've always been someone who I can come and talk to about issues. You look for compromise when it's there, and when we disagree, which we do oftentimes, you always do it agreeably. With cordiality and not with animosity, which is far and few between oftentimes in this building, I know. But you've always been consistent in that regard, and I want to commend you for your service and say thank you so much for what you've done, Pete. All right?
Well, I thank you. Probably the highlight of your chairmanship and the fact we went to Elko and we had a big evening at the Star. That was probably the highlight.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right, man. So thank you so much, Pete. You're fantastic.
Thank you so much, Attorney General. I'd also like to welcome someone very close to Senator Goicoechea. I would love to welcome Ms. McIntosh up to say a few words about her long-term partnership.
Senator Pazina asked me to come and say a few words for you, and I have been so fortunate to work as your assistant for 7 consecutive sessions. So I admire you for your integrity, a passionate devotion for the rural issues, water, and more. Your commitment and your word are golden, has always been. You are humble and charming at the same time. You have, you greet everybody by their name, and some old-timers you have given a nickname, which they all treasure. And I would like to thank you for the time I served you. I was very honored. I learned a lot. And your friendship and your care and your love, I will treasure it forever. Thank you.
Toshi, I can't thank you enough. You know, everybody in this, especially the legislators here, know you don't do it alone. And like I say, the fact that you've been with me for 14 years, and you know, I know you were with Heidi before I kind of inherited you with leadership, but it was great. And you know, I have to thank Heidi for the gift because you made my career successful. You've just been so great, and you know, our friendship goes forever, even though we're retiring.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to welcome someone who served on this committee with you in the past, Director Settlemyer, who has reason to come before this committee now from time to time as well.
Thank you, Chair, for the honor to come in here and give Senator Goicoechea a bad time. We've been giving each other a bad time since about 2007. I think it was the first session I came into the building. In that respect, I was very fortunate to make good friendships with the Cowboy Caucus. They let me in as the young punk, to say the least, from John Marvel to Carpenter, even over on this side, Dean Rhodes. And been very fortunate to have that experience. He's actually helped temper me, which I know most of you don't actually believe. But he actually helped me realize that sometimes you have to look more in the middle than a little bit too far to the right. So I thank you for the training you did. And he's trained so many people, even the individual who helps kind of take care of me on a day-to-day basis, Gina Plummer. You know, I sat there and you helped kind of guide her, and she helped guide you through the years. So it's an absolute pleasure to come in here. And the other reality is, it was my first session. Unfortunately, my dad had passed away. So in some respects, he kind of became a surrogate dad. So thank you for this honor and privilege. Good to see you, Pete.
So I think what I'm trying to do is make our poor colleague cry before the end of the day. I'd love to welcome up your son as well. And thank you so much for joining us today, Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a little speeding ticket coming through Washoe Valley I'll be giving to somebody here in a little bit. So everybody's talking about how long they knew the senator for. I probably have known him longer, willing to say. Everybody's talking about what a humble and soft-spoken man he is. I've got some stories for you that I'm not sure we can share in here in front of the committee. But in all honesty, when I came home in 2000, I knew that this is where he wanted to go, and he did. And I want to thank him, and I think rural Nevada needs to thank him. It's been amazing to see the work that he has done. When I was a cattlemen's president, I talked him into putting 2 words in a bill, horses and water, and he said he would never, ever do that again. But we did manage to make it through that. But in all honesty, he has been a great asset for all of Nevada. He has definitely taught me how to get along with everybody and all sides, and I really appreciate that. But I think I would like to present him with something. I brought Doug here to help me with it, because you guys talk about him running meetings and a gavel and being the guy he is. Knowing him for 50 years, I'm not sure a gavel is what he needs to run a meeting. So, Madam Chair, if we may approach the dais.
Please,
Okay. This is a more fitting
just don't hit him over the head with it.
This is a more fitting gavel for Senator Goicoechea.
We had another former chair that wanted to come in and just say thank you, because you've proven just so wonderful to all of us chairs over time. So Senator Doñate, would you like to say a couple words? We also have Assemblyman Watts, who has chaired Natural Resources for a long time, and we're grateful to both of them, who I know have learned so much from you as well.
Thank you so much, Chair. I wanted to get the chance to just come and thank Senator Goicoechea. Happy Pete Goicoechea Day. You know, I think it's amazing to see this room filled behind us, because typically you don't see it that often. Most of the times, as you know, natural resources meetings maybe have 5, 6 people, unless if it's a controversial issue. And the other, that's when you know when you're in trouble, or when you're here to support Pete Goicoechea Day. I want to just I know it's difficult sometimes for folks in the public to understand what goes behind the scenes. Oftentimes, the relationships that legislators make. Senator Goicoechea, outside of his humbleness and the sincerity that he has, I think one of the important aspects that I had last session when I was serving as chair, were two things. When I first met Senator Goicoechea, he asked me, where's your family from? And I told him, oh, they're from Zacatecas, Mexico. And he's like, oh, I speak Spanish. I've had a lot of workers that are from there. And it brought me some level of comfort where I didn't really know many people in this building. I hadn't been in politics, but I had someone that I could relate to. And it was a good moment because the mallet. It was a good moment because he mentioned, of course, this was during the COVID session, and he mentioned, I hope I get the chance to meet your father from Mexico, and he got the chance to meet him this session. And then, outside of that, I think he is the godfather to a lot of us on natural resources issues. His legacy will be remembered for his efforts on not just in water, as we know, but his work that he did for the rules. There was a funny moment that Senator Scheibel and Senator Hansen will remember from last session where we were around this time frame, and there was a bill that we had gotten last minute, and I can't recall exactly what it was. I think it had to do something with fuel efficiency, et cetera, for the fuel that goes into tractors, et cetera. And we got the bill last minute. We had to schedule a bill hearing because we were already towards the end of session. I didn't know what to do with it. I looked to my vice chair, which was Senator Scheibel. She didn't know what to do with it. We looked at Chris Brooks. He didn't know what to do with it. And then we look at Senator Goicoechea, and he gives us a thumbs up. And we're like, okay, we're good. We can work session it. And that, for a lot of issues, that's simply it. It's the Pete Goicoechea way. We will miss having him in the legislature. I don't think there's anyone that can replace him. And his legacy will forever be remembered in this building, and we thank him for his service. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, it's really been a pleasure serving with you. Just to build on some of the remarks that have come from others, in my time over 3 regular sessions, I have heard from particularly colleagues on the other side of the aisle from you in the Senate and the Assembly who have looked to you for thoughts and guidance, particularly on water, but on issues that affect rural communities where folks have a little bit less familiarity. And that definitely includes me, although, I got familiar with you and your work before I entered this body when I was doing work to try and protect water resources, particularly in rural and eastern Nevada, an issue that, you have been a stalwart champion on. And I think that was very helpful from my perspective entering the legislature to work with and learn from the perspectives of folks all across our state in every different district, representing every different community. I really appreciate that you're a straight shooter, you're honest, everyone knows exactly where you're coming from. If there's an opportunity to try and find a path forward, you're open to figuring out what that path is. And again, we certainly don't see eye to eye on everything, although quite a bit more than my colleague over to my right here. But again, at the end of the day, you've done tremendous work to be open, to be approachable, to bring a little bit of humor and just humility to help folks from completely different backgrounds understand issues that are of critical importance to the state. I truly appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to have the opportunity to serve with you, to hopefully do some great things for the future of our state's resources, particularly water resources, both in our work in different houses on the natural resources committees, as well as our work in the budget committees as well. And just really applaud your leadership and the example you set for representing the interests of your community while also working with folks regardless of party, regardless of house, to make progress and do what's best for the state. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I believe that Senator Hansen, who's also worked with you for a really long time, no, just kidding, wanted to say a few
That's
words.
true, actually. Pete, if I didn't know you so well, I'd be so impressed by what everybody's been saying today. Actually, my first, I've known the Goicoechea family as the Elko branch of the family since at least 1980. So I was already aware of the Goicoecheas, and then I actually came down here in that 2005 session. I remember testifying in front of the Natural Resources Committee, and Pete was on it, and John Carpenter. I think the chair at that time was Jerry Claiborne, and Pete asked a bunch of questions of me. It was a trapping bill, of course. That was my first introduction, but then when I got elected in 2010, during the 2010 cycle, Pete was aggressively helping my opponent. True story. So when I got elected, we had to vote for the leadership, and it was him versus Hambrick, and I voted for Hambrick, and I lost, surprisingly. I always lose elections, but then I had to meet with Pete to get my assignments for committees, and he asked me what committees I wanted. I said Ways and Means, Commerce and Labor, and Natural Resources, and I got Natural Resources. So that was my introduction. I will say this especially about Pete. It's an honor to serve with him. He's the last of a kind of a breed that when I first came here, you had John Carpenter, Dean Rhodes, James Settlemeyer, Pete Goicoechea, Debbie Smith used to really participate in that Cowboy Caucus too. Pete's the last of that line. I mean, there's nobody there anymore. You know, I'm trying to fill the big shoes a little bit, but I just don't have that background like those guys did. So when Pete leaves this building, really it's the end of a kind of a legacy in the building. Maybe in the future there'll be some genuine Nevada rancher from I don't know how many generations, 4 generation native Nevada Basque family like they are. But with him leaving the building, with sine die, I mean that really ends a very unique era. So for me personally, it's been so fun to sit down and visit with him. We share so many common things, interests, areas of the state that we visited, just a lot of experiences that are shared. And when he leaves, I feel like a dinosaur in a way around here on a lot of those issues. So it's been an honor not only to serve with him, and by the way, we worked out all our differences on the leadership. And during that 2011 session, I came to really respect him as the leader of our caucus. He looked out for us, he helped guide us, he gave us great advice. He really understands certain key issues, water especially, but there are a lot of issues that he has really in-depth knowledge of as well. So when he leaves the building for the last time, we really lose one of those great institutional type people that understand the process, love the state, love the institution itself, understand how to make it work and work correctly, how to work with governors and everything else. So to me, the saddest part is losing him not only as a friend who's here as an advisor, but kind of a loss to the state of Nevada in a way too. Kind of an era is dying when Pete leaves for the last time. So with that, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve with you, deeply respect you. We probably get along about 99% of the time on most issues, and it's very rare where I would ever, especially on natural resources issue, cross swords with Pete Goicoechea, because the times I have, I've been wrong. So I learned the hard way. And with that, Pete, love you, and I'm going to miss you, and it's been a great, this is my 7th session, and you've been there the whole time. So anyway, love you, and I'm going to miss you, and I sincerely and deeply have appreciated serving with you.
But you have seen me boil over too.
I have. I understand. When JJ was talking, I got some glimpses of that. We're going to miss that line too. The bottom line is. Thanks, Madam Chair.
And Senator Hansen, I'm thrilled that I now have you on the record saying that where Senator Goicoechea and you disagreed, you were wrong, and I'll remind you of the state horse vote.
Except this session, that's another thing.
I'd also like to invite Greg Baylor, who's a former caucus director who had the opportunity to work with Senator Goicoechea. Then we'll have our vice chair speak as a former chair, and then we will get started on our work sessions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's one thing to serve with Senator Goicoechea, it's another thing to staff him. Pete, the 4 years we worked together, absolute honor, great part of my career. And to travel is also across rural Nevada, be on those parade routes with you, and be in those meetings when we do the monthly or the weekly phone call with rural Nevada. If you don't know about the constituent work, that Senator Gocochea has done. And he keeps in constant communication with his constituency, and also kept offices open in parts of the state that you don't traditionally have one. Pete, Nevada's going to miss your service. We are all better for having the opportunity to work with you. Thank you, sir.
Can I request that Mr. Baylor do his Pete Gocochea impression?
We're going to knock some tops off some jugs. Good, good.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair, for giving me a moment to speak about someone I admire so much, Senator Gocochea. And I think really I just want to mention two things that we've touched on, but I can't express strongly enough. And the first one is that when I came to this body, I thought that I cared about rural Nevada, but I didn't really know what that meant until I served with Senator Gocochea. And the way that he cares about his community and fights for his community is something that I aspire to do. And also, you know, I do see that there will be a hole left behind when he moves on, and someone will have to fill that to fight for rural communities, and he's inspired me to try to be one of those voices, though, like my colleague Senator Hansen said, I'll never be quite as steeped in it or as authentic in it, but he's really inspired me to work for rural Nevada. And then the other thing that I want all of you to know is that, you know, when I first got elected, I wasn't even 30 yet, and a lot of people make a lot of assumptions about what it's like up here. And I'm not talking about Senator Gocochea personally. I'm talking about people say to me, isn't it like filled with men? Aren't you going to have to deal with all of these old timers who aren't going to be nice to you? How are you going to deal with, you know, people who've been around for a long time? And never once did Senator Gocochea treat me as anything other than his equal. He treated me with respect. He educated me on issues that I didn't even know were issues. He listened to me when I tried to persuade him. And I remember my very first session walking into his office and feeling like I had been there 100 times before, because he greeted me like we had worked together for 20 years. And it was the very first time that we were sitting down face to face. I also had the joy of sitting between Senators Gocochea and Hansen on the floor my first session. And so I can attest that he's an excellent storyteller. They both are. And so when they tell stories to each other, sitting in the middle is actually an awesome place to be.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. And I believe Senator Flores also wanted to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to start off by saying this is the first time I serve on this committee, and the very strong advice I got was just listen to Pete. Walking in, I just wanted to say, and I also have the honor of serving alongside of him in government affairs, and I sincerely appreciate you, and no other human can probably fill a room the way you did it now. A lot of us will leave this building, and I can assure you that we won't have this presence. We won't have this messaging. We won't have all these humans who are passionately speaking about how much you've touched them. And that's just testament to the fact that you're just a great human, above all else. I think every single person in this room feels that your aura, your energy, your presence makes us better. And I think it's important that you know that. I am so, by the way, Madam Chair, every bill he supports on work session today, I will support as well. It's like cheating on a test. I sit next to the smartest kid in class, and I just go with whatever he goes with. But I did have a small gift that I wanted to present to you for your service to government affairs, for your service here, but more importantly, just to your service to the state. And again, I know there's been times that we've probably driven you to wanting to drink. And so we have a decanter, and it has your name on there, and it thanks you for your service this session. And it also has government affairs on there because we are the best committee.
Except natural resources.
Get myself in trouble here. And something to accompany that. But I just wanted to say thank you. I sincerely appreciate you, and this state is better because you're in it.
That'll build a headache.
Thank you so much to everyone who came here today for the opportunity to embarrass and pay tribute to one of our colleagues who's just been so kind and such a wonderful resource to all of us. So thank you. With that said, we are going to get into our work session for today. And to all the legislators who came just for this, thank you so much. It's appreciated that you're here for our colleague. Thank you. And for the committee members who came by and those who came to pay tribute today to the wonderful legacy of Senator Goicoechea, we do have some baked goods for after committee meeting. So for work session today, we're going to work session several bills. As you all know, it's that time of year. It's the very end of session. So we're going to be work sessioning AB 20, AB 34, AB 70, AB 86, AB 91, AB 191, AB 220, AB 424, and ACR 5. So it's going to be a very busy day today. And with that, we'd like to remind everyone that we will not be taking testimony at the work session. However, if we do call someone forward as necessary to answer questions from committee members, we'll have you come up to the front, to the hot seat, and we'll begin today on AB 20. And our policy analyst, Ms. Keller, will be walking us through the work session. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Pazina. Elisa Keller, Committee Policy Analyst. The measures to be considered today are summarized on the work session documents that are posted on the legislature's website, Nellis. And the first bill for the committee's consideration is Assembly Bill 20. It is sponsored by the Assembly Committee on Natural Resources on behalf of the Division of Environmental Protection and was heard by this committee on May 4th. Assembly Bill 20 revises the acceptable uses of money received and entities eligible to receive money from the account to finance the construction of treatment works and the implementation of pollution control projects in accordance with federal law. The bill also revises how funding received from the account for the revolving fund and the account for set-aside programs may be used in accordance with federal law. And finally, the bill expands the list of eligible recipients receiving certain grants from the Board for Financing Water Projects and removes the requirement that not more than 3 members of the board may be of the same political party. And there are no amendments proposed.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions on AB 20? Okay, great. Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion to do pass. Wonderful. We have a motion to do pass from our vice chair, a second from Senator Hansen. Do we have any discussion on the motion? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. The motion carries, and I will assign the floor statement to Senator Hansen. All right. Our next work session is AB 34, and Ms. Keller, take it away.
Assembly Bill 34 was sponsored by the Assembly Committee on Natural Resources on behalf of the Division of Water Resources, and was heard by this committee on May 16th. Assembly Bill 34, the first reprint, revises certain provisions relating to the state engineer's public notice requirements. The bill eliminates the statutory requirement that certain notices and orders be published consecutively and adds a requirement for the Division of Water Resources to post certain orders and notices on its website. In addition, the bill removes requirements that certain water rights maps be supplied on Mylar and tracing linen. The committee will recall that at our last meeting at the hearing on this bill, the Division of Water Resources proposed an amendment, which is attached in the work session document, to delete sections 1, 2, 5, and 8 of the bill and revise section 6, line 44, to delete the words "and posting." And that was the only amendment.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing no questions on Assembly Bill 34, I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass. So moved. Look at that. We'll take a motion from our vice chair, a second from Senator Hansen. Do we have any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries for Assembly Bill 34, and we will assign the floor statement to Senator Gocochea. All right, that'll take us into our next work session on AB 70.
Thank you, Chair Pazina. Assembly Bill 70 was sponsored by the Assembly Committee on Natural Resources on behalf of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources and was heard by this committee on May 11th. Assembly Bill 70 revises provisions relating to the use of proceeds collected from the $3 game tag application processing fee. And specifically, the first reprint requires the Department of Wildlife to use such proceeds as directed by the applicant for costs related to either developing and implementing a program for the lethal removal of predatory wildlife or wildlife management activities for the protection of non-predatory game species and their habitats. At the hearing, Assemblyman Watts proposed an amendment, which is attached in the work session document, revising the language of Section 1 to provide that the second choice regarding the use of the proceeds is for costs related to developing an annual program to provide for habitat improvement and research or management beneficial to non-predatory game species.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the committee on AB 70? All right, Senator Hansen.
I don't see Assemblyman Watts here. No, I just want to make sure that the intent was to allow for the predator, if they choose the predator control box, that it was supposed to be 100% available for lethal control. That was the testimony. I just want to make sure on the record that's still our understanding.
Ms. Sturdivant, can you help with that?
Surprise.
That's all right. While she's looking that up, Madam Chair, I would want to just a real quick comment too. The Department of Wildlife just released their big game application information. There were 432,261 big game applications that generated about $1.3 million at the $3 fee. Unfortunately, there was only 18,000 tags available for all big game species, and that was out of 85,362 licensed sportsmen that applied. And there were almost 5,000 first-time applicants, so that's really, really good. Unfortunately, the deer herd shrunk down to 68,000, probably the lowest it's been since the 1940s. But anyway, the need for some, at least in the eyes of the sportsmen, for some predator control efforts is very much warranted, and that's why we're quite happy with the compromise that Chairman Watts did on behalf of this bill.
Erin Sturdivant, Legislative Council Bureau. Yes, the options would be developing and implementing an annual program for lethal removal or the annual program for habitat improvement and research or management.
Perfect. That was the answer I was looking for. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, that's what we're here for, and thank you so much, Ms. Sturdivant, for answering that question for us. Any further questions? All right, seeing no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to do, amend, and pass. All right, thank you so much. We have amend and do pass by Senator Gocochea, a second from Senator Hansen. Do we have any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, this motion carries, and I will assign the floor statement to Senator Flores. All right, on to the next. Thank you so much, Ms. Keller.
Assembly Bill 86 was sponsored by Assemblywoman Hardy and was heard by this committee on May 16th. Assembly Bill 86 extends certain prohibitions against committing certain acts to include an animal kept for working purposes or a domesticated animal that is not owned by a person. The bill also makes it unlawful to confine an animal in certain spaces and deprive an animal of necessary veterinary care or grooming or shearing. The bill prohibits a person, with exceptions for dogs engaged in certain activities, from restraining a dog with an improperly fitted collar or harness or with a weighted tether, chain, tie, trolley, or pulley system, and leaving a dog outside and unattended unless the dog has access to adequate shelter as defined in the bill. At the hearing, an amendment, and the mock-up is attached in the work session document, was proposed by the bill sponsor, Assemblywoman Hardy, to clarify that an animal is not considered abandoned if a person delivers the animal directly to a representative of an animal rescue organization or animal shelter. And after the hearing, an additional amendment was proposed to replace subsection 5 of section 1 of the bill, setting forth an affirmative defense that a defendant may use to say that they were unable to afford necessary veterinary care, grooming, or shearing of an animal. The proposed amendment is included in the work session document and in summary requires that a defendant who intends to offer the affirmative defense at trial shall, not less than 21 days before trial or at such other time as the court directs, file and serve upon the prosecuting attorney a written notice of his or her intent to claim the affirmative defense. And provides that a defendant is not considered unable to afford necessary veterinary care, grooming, or shearing of the animal if, during the period that the defendant was obligated to provide and failed to provide necessary veterinary care, grooming, or shearing, the defendant declined certain assistance or was unable to afford the necessary care, grooming, or shearing because of excessive spending, indebtedness, or other legal obligation, unless the spending, indebtedness, or other legal obligation was not within the control of the defendant.
Thank you. That's a mouthful on AB 86. Do we have any questions from the committee?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate this amendment. I did talk to some of the people out of Washoe County, as not really the bill sponsor, but yeah, I think it, the fact that if you decline it, if those animal services offers to help and you decline it, then clearly you're in violation, and I appreciate that. At least give them the opportunity to get the vet care and the grooming they need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much again, Assemblywoman, for working with stakeholders on this. We really appreciate it. Seeing no further questions, do we have a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 86? So moved. All right, we have a motion from our Vice Chair. Do we have a second? A second from Senator Flores, and any other discussion on the motion? All right, Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I appreciate the intent behind the bill. I'm just not there on it. The fact that we're now defining how dog houses have to be built, in some cases requiring shearing and grooming of animals, and then even though we've offered a positive defense, the very fact that the most poverty-stricken people could potentially be forced to have to defend themselves on why they have to shear or groom or why their doghouse doesn't make a certain standard. I just think we've gone way too far on this. I think current law is quite adequate. There haven't been any cases presented where there was something missing currently that the animal control people couldn't use now. So I just think this bill, the way this thing's set up, it's going to be the people that are most vulnerable in our society that have the least ability to provide themselves a legal defense are the ones that are going to end up getting nailed on this stuff. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be a no on this one.
All right, any further discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. All right. The motion carries, and please note that Senator Hansen was a nay on this one, and we will assign the floor statement to our Vice Chair, Senator Scheibel. All right, that'll take us to Assembly Bill 91, and thank you so much, Ms. Keller.
Assembly Bill 91 is sponsored by Assemblyman DeLong and was heard by this committee on May 2nd. Assembly Bill 91 allows a person to sink or bore a replacement well without submitting an application to change the place of diversion of water already appropriated if both the original well and replacement well are on public lands and the replacement well is within 300 feet of the original place of diversion. The bill also provides that a person seeking to sink or bore such a replacement well on public lands must notify any relevant federal agency that is charged with administering the lands and comply with all applicable federal laws. And there are no amendments proposed.
All right, thank you so much. Do we have any questions? All right, seeing no questions, I will entertain a motion to do pass. So moved. Second. Look at that, we have 3 of them. We were all over it today. All right, we have a do pass from our vice chair, a second from Senator Goicoechea, but I also appreciate your chiming in as well, Senator Hansen. Did you want to chime in too, Senator Flores, just because? Just kidding. All right, any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries on Assembly Bill 91, and I will assign the floor statement to Senator Flores as the only one who didn't chime in. All right, thank you. We'll move on to Assembly Bill 191, and thank you so much.
Assembly Bill 191 excludes from the term supplier of water a public or private entity with less than 15 service connections serving year-round residents and supplying water for municipal or quasi-municipal purposes. At the hearing, Assemblyman DeLong proposed an amendment, which is attached in the work session document, that deletes the language from subsection 2A regarding serving year-round residents and supplying water for municipal or quasi-municipal purposes. So the bill, as amended, instead excludes from the term supplier of water any public or private entity that has less than 15 service connections, as defined in NRS 445A.843.
All right, thank you so much. Do we have any questions? All right, I think we talked ourselves out in the first part of the meeting today. Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass. Thank you so much, Senator Hansen, and a second from Senator Goicoechea. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries on Assembly Bill 191. Thank you, Assemblyman, for being present in case any questions came up. And I will assign this floor statement to Senator Hansen. All right, and that'll bring us to Assembly Bill 220, which a few of you in the room may have heard of before.
Assembly Bill 220, sponsored by the Assembly Committee on Natural Resources on behalf of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources, was heard by this committee on May 16th. Assembly Bill 220 revises several provisions related to water conservation. In its first reprint, the bill includes provisions related to septic conversions and connections to community sewer systems, revises the conservation of the Colorado River Water Act to, amongst other things, restrict single-family residents using water from the Colorado River to not more than 0.5 acre-feet of water per year in certain emergency circumstances, and to prohibit the installation of irrigation of non-functional turf on certain parcels. The bill also authorizes the Central Nevada Water Authority to restrict water usage during certain emergencies and shortages. So a more comprehensive summary of the bill in its first reprint is included in the work session document. But at the hearing, there were amendments proposed, and the amendments to be considered by the committee are the three amendments that are included in the work session document. First, the Southern Nevada Water Authority proposed an amendment to add a new section to provide a definition of a local governing body, add language to section 4.5 about sureties required pursuant to NRS 445.895 regarding refunding potential surplus sureties and assessments, delete section 8 from the bill, amend section 34 to provide that the provisions of this section are not intended to restrict the use of any water rights held by the United States Department of Defense. A second amendment was proposed by the Southern Nevada Water Authority to amend section 26, adding clarifying language. And finally, Senator Wynn proposed an amendment to delete the existing section 1, including all state-imposed mandates and deadlines for septic conversions, and add a new section 1 to provide that the District Board of Health may create a voluntary financial assistance program to pay 100% of the cost for a septic conversion for a property owner with an existing municipal water connection and septic system. Upon a 2/3 vote of members, the District Board of Health may impose a voluntary fee capped at the annual sewer rate of the largest community sewer system in the county to help fund septic conversions. And before December 31st, 2024, the District Board of Health must submit a report to the legislature on the number of properties that have participated in the voluntary financial assistance program and recommendations for further action. The amendment deletes sections 9 and 11 and amends section 29 to provide that the Board of Directors shall establish a process to approve a waiver of the 0.5 acre-feet of water limitation for specific properties.
Thank you so much, Ms. Keller. I know that was a mouthful as well. Do we have any questions on Assembly Bill 220? All right, Senator Gokachia.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of clarifications. And I, for one, I didn't realize that there were revocable permits, domestic wells in the Las Vegas Valley. So with the new amendment, it says if you're within 1,250 feet of a service, then the state engineer, I believe, shall deny. Is that correct?
Chair Pazina, Andy Belanger for the record, in response to the question, yes, that's the way it works. I will say, we just had a conversation with the state engineer's office on the clarifying amendment that we proposed, and they would prefer section 26 to remain the way it is, so we'd like to withdraw that second amendment and only have the first amendment and Senator Wynn's amendment processed. They would prefer to have the language that's in that first reprint, and we support that.
Okay, please note that, Ms. Keller, for the record, that the second amendment that was proposed by SNWA will be coming out. Committee members, please note that as well. Senator Gokachia, did that answer your question?
Well, that raises another question then, because in the Second Amendment, I think it does clarify that, as I looked at this, the second piece, and it would have been, in the amendment, it was under 5, then B, where it did clarify that may permit repairs being made to and then it didn't have domestic in it originally. It said a well, and I think we probably need to get that domestic in, otherwise the state engineer could, it might be a commercial or larger purpose well. So even though we're taking this amendment out, we probably need to put that one word back in the original draft.
Chair Pazina, for the record, Andy Belanger, that's correct. The way that section 26 is in the first reprint, it's 1,250 feet for temporary permits, those revocable permits in the Las Vegas Valley. And if they're within 1,250 feet, the state engineer may require connection. If it's a domestic well, what we intend is for the protections that were in the existing statute to remain, which is 180 feet and the well having failed, meaning you have to bring a drill rig on the property, either deepen or replace the well. That's the standard that we want to make sure is maintained for domestic well owners so that they have assurance that they're protected.
Okay. All right, so we're deleting if the property was within 1,250 feet. So at this point, the language as it'll come out in the bill is 180 feet of a domestic well. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I believe we did have another question, so don't stray too far, Mr. Belanger, and thank you. Senator Hansen.
Thanks, Mayor. Actually, I think you answered it, because we talked about it. You wanted to get domestic in there to make sure we're protecting those small water districts. They're still on a well. This would only apply to a residential well, basically. Is that? I want to make sure that's correct.
Madam Chair, for the record, Andy Belanger, yes, that's correct.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Of course. Do we have any other questions? I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Sturdivant.
Erin Sturdivant, Legislative Council Bureau. I just want to make sure I understand the amendment before it's voted on for Section 26. If the 180 feet only applies to domestic wells, does that mean that subparagraphs 2, 3, and B all have those limitations that are set forth in paragraph B? Because then that might need to be changed to clarify that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Andy Belanger, for the record. So the way that the current statute reads that was put in place in 1999 only had those modifiers, the 180 feet and the well having to fail, related to that may limit the drilling of domestic wells. So it only applied to that third section, not the remaining, not the upper two.
Okay, this has been illuminating. All right, any other questions? Okay, seeing no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass on Assembly Bill 220.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion from the Vice Chair. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. A second from Senator Gocochea. Do we have any discussion on the motion? All right, with that, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries, and I will take the floor statement for that one. Thank you very much. And that will move us into Assembly Bill 424.
Assembly Bill 424 was sponsored by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs on behalf of the Legislative Committee for the Review and Oversight of the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and the Marlette Lake Water System. It was heard by this committee on May 9th. Assembly Bill 424 requires the State Board of Finance to issue not more than $13 million in general obligation bonds to fund certain environmental improvement and conservation projects included in the second phase of the Environmental Improvement Program for the Lake Tahoe Basin. The bill also allows the use of interest accrued on the proceeds of previously issued bonds to carry out such projects, and there were no amendments proposed.
All right, committee, do we have any questions? This is probably one of our more straightforward bills that we're hearing for work session today. All right, seeing no questions, I will entertain a motion to pass. All right, we have a motion from our vice chair. We have a second from Senator Hansen. Do we have any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing no discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries, and I will assign the floor statement to Senator Gocochea. All right, moving into ACR 5.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 5 was sponsored on behalf of the Legislative Committee for the Review and Oversight of the TRPA and the Marlette Lake Water System. Assembly Concurrent Resolution 5 expresses the legislature's support for the Lake Tahoe Transportation Action Plan and for the funding of high-priority transportation projects in the Lake Tahoe Basin, and there were no amendments proposed.
All right, do we have any questions on the concurrent resolution? All right, I don't see any questions, so I will entertain a motion to do pass. So moved. All right, I have a motion from our vice chair. Do we have a second? A second from Senator Gocochea. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries for Assembly Concurrent Resolution number 5, and I will assign the floor statement to our Vice Chair, Senator Scheibel. And that will conclude our work session for the day. But that's not our final order of business, which moves us into public comment. So if anyone would like to make public comment here, not to do with any of the bills discussed, we would still absolutely welcome you to the front. Come on forward.
Hello, Will Adler for the record. I felt the need to come up and make a public comment to ditto most of the comments at the beginning of this hearing. Not just for electeds or those who work in the building, but the lobbyists and those who come into this building too need a lot of training. My first year, Pete Gocochea took me in and really taught me what it meant to know water law on paper and to know how it is actually applied in the real world and how it is applied equally across Nevada. So I would give you most of the credit and most of my experience and background when it comes to lobbying with water and most of the things I do in this building. And you're an amazing man and you will be missed and irreplaceable. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adler. Would anyone else like to make public comment? BPS, do we have anyone on the phones?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. Seeing no one else coming forward here, I would remind the committee that in honor of Senator Gocochea, we do have some baked goods sitting over there by the side, and anyone else who's in the audience, of course, is welcome as well, although Senator Gocochea does get first pick. That said, we will post a notice when we have our next meeting on the Committee of Natural Resources, and I would also like to give a special thank you to the amazing staff who does such a wonderful job every single committee meeting. I'm so grateful for everyone here in this room, from Ms. Keller and Ms. Sturdivant to Ms. Timothy, who handles our IT, to the broadcast team, to our wonderful, wonderful committee secretaries, Ms. Kennedy and Ms. Dittler, who do a great job every time. And of course, it goes without saying, our committee manager, Cameron, who's standing in the back. Thank you so much for all of the hard work that goes into each of these meetings. We'll look forward to a future meeting as bills make their way out of Assembly Ways and Means. On that note, thank you so much to the committee, to the inestimable Senator Goicoechea, and this meeting is adjourned.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say it's been an absolute pleasure having had an opportunity to sit on this committee with you. This is your very first session. I think you've done an exceptional job. There's been very difficult conversations you've managed very well, and I just wanted to say it's been an absolute honor and pleasure serving alongside of you. And I look forward to continuing to work alongside of you in your leadership. But I just wanted to say that you should be very proud. I think everybody thinks you've done an amazing job.
Ditto. I would also like to, yes. And thank you for having me as your vice chair this year. My job was incredibly easy because you did all of the work. And I love serving on this committee, especially under your leadership. And so thank you for everything you've done for us this session.
Thank you, everyone, and please eat baked goods.